Say hey.
Hey.
Say hey.
Hey.
Say hey.
Hey. Hey.
How lovely it is.
A mom and her then boyfriend accused of 17-month-old Levi were back in a Morgan County courtroom today. Amanda Beaty and Roger Prince are charged with first-degree murder. Prince's attorney is asking the judge to modify the conditions of his bond, allowing Prince to return to work as a truck driver and leave the state as needed for his job.
I find myself wondering, what did he do so wrong to deserve it? Because no child, I don't care, does not deserve this kind of or treatment under no circumstances. I actually did not sleep for 3 days. A wink, nothing.
June 1st, 2014, 7:19 p.m. Wartburg, Morgan County, Tennessee. A 911 call is placed from an apartment on the east side of town. A baby is not breathing. When deputies arrived, they found 2 people performing CPR on a 17-month-old boy, a neighbor, and a man who lived nearby. The baby's lips were blue. Deputy Trevor Shaden noted a gray tint to the child's skin, the kind that tells a first responder the body has been without oxygen for some time. Not seconds, longer than that. The man performing CPR had an explanation ready. The baby choked on a cookie, he said, a vanilla wafer. He told this to the deputy. He told it to the paramedics. He said he had found cookie residue in the airway himself and cleared it. When paramedics checked, there was no cookie, no crumbs, no residue, no evidence that a cookie had ever been there. What investigators would piece together in the hours and days that followed was this: the Department of Children's Services had an open, active case on this family. There was a court order, signed, issued, in force, prohibiting this man from being anywhere near this child. He was in that apartment anyway. He had been there for nearly 2 hours. His name was Levi Beaty. He was 17 months old. He could not talk yet, could not say words, could not tell you what he wanted, what he needed, what was happening to him. He was at that age where the whole world is communicated through reaching, arms out, eyes wide, toward the person he trusted most. He was the youngest of 3 children, the baby of the family. Amanda's cousin, Laura Worthington, described him simply: he was a happy baby. That's it. That's the whole sentence. A happy baby who couldn't talk, couldn't say words. The kind of child who doesn't need language yet because the people around him are supposed to be enough. For a while, they were. Wesley Beaty had been married to Amanda for 9 years. Levi was his son, his youngest. And when the marriage ended and Amanda took custody of all 3 children, Wesley was still there. A father who existed, who was reachable, who would later stand in a courtroom 4 years after his son's death and say the words that don't leave you once you've heard them: I won't ever get to see him graduate, see his future. Nothing. That was all taken away. Wesley was not in that apartment on June 1st, 2014. He was not called to the hospital. He was banned from his own son's funeral. The conviction, 4 years later, in a courtroom in Loudoun County, was, as he described it, the closest he would ever get to closure. Wesley is the person who carries Levi forward. He is the father who never got to say goodbye, and his grief is the thread that runs through everything that follows. There is one other person who needs to be named here: Jean Quinn, Levi's great-grandmother. She sat in that courtroom for the entirety of the trial. Every day, every witness, every piece of medical evidence, every photograph. She heard prosecutors describe what happened to her great-grandchild as torturous. She watched Wesley's oldest daughter, a child herself, take the stand against her own mother. Jean Quinn did not look away from any of it. By the time the people outside the home started paying attention to Levi, a babysitter named Cindy Wicks had already noticed something that has stayed with everyone who heard her say it. You would see him cry, she said, but you would never hear that baby cry. A 16-month-old child, already crying in silence. But that is not who Levi was at the beginning. That is not the baby Wesley held. That is not the child Jean Quinn watched from across a room and felt something for that you don't need words to describe either. At the beginning, Levi was just a happy baby, youngest of 3, reaching for people, laughing, someone's whole world. In the summer of 2013, Amanda Beaty was 27 years old. She had 3 children, a 6-year-old, a 2-year-old, and Levi, 17 months, the youngest, the baby. She had just come out of a 9-year marriage. Wesley was gone from the home, but he was not gone. He was still a father, still reachable, still someone the children had. Amanda was struggling, opiate addiction, single mother, a life that had come apart faster than she had been able to prepare for. But the structure around those children still existed. There were people. There was Wesley. There was Jean Quinn, paying attention from a distance, the way great-grandmothers do. And there was Leah, Wesley's oldest daughter, a child herself at the time, but the kind of child who understood more than the adults around her wanted to believe. She was watching. She was taking it in. Years later, she would walk into a courtroom and take the stand against her own mother. Not because it was easy, because it was true. That's who Leah was. That's the family Levi had around him. Imperfect, fractured, but present. People who, when it came down to it, chose truth. That was the world before August 2013. 3 children in a home with a mother who was struggling, but still there. A father who was still reachable. A great-grandmother who was still watching. A sister who would one day speak for the brother who never learned to speak for himself. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And then Amanda opened Facebook and reconnected with someone she used to know, Roger Dale Prince II. Recently divorced, a working man, a father himself, a 13-year-old daughter from his marriage. To Amanda, struggling and alone with 3 small children, he looked like stability, someone willing to open his home, someone who showed up. That was the version of Roger the world saw. What the world didn't see, what nobody checked, was what Roger's ex-wife's family already knew. His ex-wife's mother would later testify, under oath, that Roger had a temper, that he was controlling, that he had essentially forced his wife to sign divorce papers that handed him full custody of their daughter. That information existed. It was sitting with someone who could have spoken to it months before Amanda ever moved in. Nobody asked. Nobody looked. 3 weeks. That's how long it took. 3 weeks from the first message on Facebook to Amanda packing up 3 children, a 6-year-old, a 2-year-old, and 17-month-old Levi, and moving them into Roger's home. At the time, it might have looked like momentum, like 2 people finding each other at the right moment. In hindsight, it was the first thing that should have given anyone pause. Roger's 13-year-old daughter was handed a role nobody had prepared her for. Her own parents' divorce was still fresh, and now she was expected to help care for 3 young children who weren't hers, including an infant who couldn't yet hold his own head up through a full night. A teenage girl, raising someone else's baby, in a house she was still adjusting to herself. Roger would later testify, in his own defense, that he loved those children, that he never harmed them. Throughout this period, he presented as the calmer of the 2 adults in that household, steadier than Amanda, more reliable, the one holding things together while she struggled. That was the perception. What nobody had put together yet, what would take months of medical records and a courtroom timeline to finally make visible, was a pattern that had already begun. Every time Levi was in Roger's presence, Levi was hurt. Every time Levi was away from Roger, the injuries stopped. The data existed from the very beginning. It just hadn't been assembled yet. October 28, 2013. 2 months after moving into Roger's home, Amanda brought Levi to Morgan County Medical Center. The reason was small: a rash, possibly flea bites from her parents' dog. Nurse practitioner Tarrant McCauley weighed him, and while she did, she noticed something else: a lump on his left clavicle. She ordered an X-ray. It came back clear: a broken collarbone in a 17-month-old. When McCauley told Amanda what the X-ray showed, Amanda appeared to have no idea, no explanation. She left the room. When she came back, she had one. Her 6-year-old daughter, she said, had seen Levi fall from his playpen. The next day, when Levi returned for a follow-up, Amanda had a new detail to add. The 6-year-old was now denying it, denying the story Amanda had told just one day earlier. Macaulay recognized what that meant. A story that didn't exist, then existed, then fell apart within 24 hours. She filed the first report to the Department of Children's Services. The system received it. What came back was not enough. December 30th, 2013. Levi returned for what was supposed to be a routine visit. Macaulay saw him again, and this time, what she saw was harder to explain away. Bruising covered multiple areas of his face and ears, at different stages of healing. Not one fall, multiple incidents, multiple days. There were also burn marks that had no accidental explanation. Macaulay's professional assessment was direct. A baby Levi's age did not have the physical strength to cause that kind of injury to himself. Amanda's explanation: he fell into a coffee table, he pinched himself, he bruised easily. Macaulay had a choice in front of her: report again and risk Amanda simply not bringing Levi back, cutting off the only access anyone had to checking on him, or wait and try to build a case strong enough that it couldn't be dismissed a second time. She chose to wait. It was a decision made by someone trying to protect Levi the best way she knew how. It cost him time he didn't have. January 14th, 2014. Macaulay saw something now that she had never encountered in this kind of case before. Marks on Levi's upper arm, small hemorrhages under the skin. Further injuries were found that medical staff could not attribute to any accidental cause. Amanda's explanation this time: maybe Levi had a bleeding disorder. Macaulay ordered blood work. Everything came back normal. She referred Levi to hematology, not to stall, to build a record that DCS could not look past again. January 23rd, 2014. Dr. Spiller, a hematologist, confirmed there was no bleeding disorder. He referred Levi to Dr. Pales, a pediatric physician who specialized in cases of child abuse. What the skeletal survey found: the skeletal survey revealed a pattern of healing fractures across multiple parts of his body, including one so rare in a child this age that the radiologist had never seen a case like it. Dozens of fractures. At different stages of healing, Dr. Pales documented mistreatment as her primary concern. She notified DCS. January 31st, 2014. DCS investigator John Norris met with the family and issued an immediate protection agreement. Levi would stay with a family friend, Plet Pollard. Roger Prince was prohibited, entirely, from having any contact with him. During the period this agreement was supposed to be in effect, Roger continued having contact with the children. Amanda allowed it. Norris did not know. Before we continue, drop your country in the comments below. It means everything to know where people are watching who still believe stories like this one deserve to be told. March 2nd, 2014. Levi was admitted to Children's Hospital. Dr. Mary Palmer was brought in. A new skeletal survey revealed something that should have stopped everything in its tracks: a fracture to his tibia, his leg, estimated to have occurred 2 to 3 weeks earlier, during the exact window he was supposed to be under protection through the immediate protection agreement. Amanda said she hadn't noticed anything different in the way Levi was moving. This was a baby who had been walking every day on a broken leg. Dr. Palmer photographed his injuries. They showed signs of repeated, ongoing harm, not one event, ongoing, while he was supposedly being protected. March 12, 2014. DCS made the decision that should have ended this story. Levi was removed from Amanda completely, placed with her parents, Stacy and Melvin Silva. A new immediate protection agreement was signed. The juvenile court issued an explicit, unambiguous order. Roger Prince was to have no contact with any of Amanda's children. Not supervised, not occasional, none. From March until May, while Levi lived with his grandparents, away from Roger Prince, there were no new injuries. Not one. No bruising, no fractures, no new injuries of any kind. For the first time since October, Levi's body had a chance to simply heal. The pattern, by now, was no longer a suspicion. It was documented, undeniable. Every time Levi was near Roger, Levi was hurt. Every time he was away, he was safe. May 7, 2014. The juvenile court allowed a trial home placement. Amanda's 3 children were returned to her, conditionally. The order keeping Roger away from Levi remained legally in force. Amanda moved into the Eastwood apartments with her children. She would later admit, under oath, that she never intended to follow that order. Roger's contact with Levi resumed almost immediately. Wesley's oldest daughter, Leah, was watching all of this. A child herself, old enough to understand what was happening was wrong. Years later, she would be the one who stood up in a courtroom and said so. But in May of 2014, the adults with the authority to act had already made their decision. They had given Amanda another chance. The children had no vote in that decision. Wesley Beaty was not in that apartment. He did not know, in real time, that a court order protecting his son was already being violated. He would not find out what happened until it was too late to do anything but grieve. And even then, he would be banned from the funeral. This was the period when Levi was closest to surviving, and the system had just handed him back to the one person whose choices would end his life. On the night of June 1, 2014, Amanda Beaty sent 60 text messages asking Roger Prince to come over. He came. Surveillance footage from an elementary school across the street from the apartment complex would later tell investigators something neither Amanda nor Roger volunteered. Roger's car entering the complex at 5:21 p.m. A food market's camera placed Amanda there at 6:52 p.m. Dollar General at 7:13 p.m. The 911 call came at 7:19 p.m. Roger Prince had been alone with all 3 children for nearly 2 hours. When emergency responders arrived, they found Roger and a neighbor performing CPR on Levi. His lips were blue. Deputy Trevor Shaden documented a gray tint to his skin, the kind that develops when a body has gone without oxygen for some time. Not seconds, longer. Roger's explanation was immediate. Levi had choked on a vanilla wafer. He said he'd found cookie residue in his airway and cleared it himself. First responders checked. There was no cookie, no crumbs, no residue. What the EMT observed during CPR was inconsistent with a blocked airway. June 4, 2014. Dr. Darinka Milusenik, Chief Medical Examiner for Knox and Anderson counties, performed the autopsy. The cause of death: catastrophic internal injuries consistent with blunt force trauma. The medical examiner's report documented the severity in clinical terms reserved for the most extreme cases she had encountered. She testified she had only seen this exact pattern of injury in major vehicle collisions. Medical evidence showed injuries from 2 distinct points in time, one inflicted at or near the moment of death, another from the day before. Wesley Beaty was not called to the hospital. He learned, somehow, secondhand, that his son was gone. He was not permitted at the funeral. The next time, he would be in the same room as the 2 people responsible for his son's death, would be a courtroom. 4 years later, Roger Prince told investigators he had arrived at the apartment just as Amanda was calling for help. Then investigators pulled the surveillance footage. The surveillance footage was the first thing to break. It placed Roger's car at the apartment complex at 5:21 p.m. When investigators confronted him with that, his first answer was that he'd arrived at 5:45. The footage didn't move. Eventually, Roger admitted the truth. He had been alone with the children for nearly 2 hours before anyone called for help. Amanda's account didn't just shift once. It changed 3 separate times. First, she said she'd been home all day, that Levi collapsed while she was getting him strawberries. Then she said a neighbor, Amber Perdue, had been babysitting. Then, finally, yes, it was Roger. But she claimed they had all agreed, together, to lie about it, to protect her from losing custody of her remaining children. In a written statement she gave in September of 2014, Amanda described a specific memory: Levi laughing when she got home, giggling, sitting on Roger's chest, pointing at her. She later admitted that none of it was true. She had invented the memory, built it from nothing, because the truth was something she could not yet say out loud. The cookie story didn't survive contact with the evidence either. No cookie was ever found, no airway blockage was detected, and the force required to cause the injuries documented in Levi's autopsy could not have come from choking on anything. Roger Prince held his position throughout. He testified that he loved the children, that he had never harmed them, but the medical record told its own story, independent of anything either of them said. Every period when Roger had access to Levi lined up with new injuries. Every period when he didn't lined up with none. Roger's own daughter took the stand. Her account did not match the physical evidence. It did not match the surveillance timeline. Jean Quinn, who had not missed a single day of that trial, would later say what she saw most clearly in that courtroom was the courage it took for Wesley's daughter, Leah, to stand up and testify against her own mother.
Levi didn't have a voice. Somebody spoke up, he got his justice, and that's all we wanted.
The trial had been moved to Loudoun County at the request of the defense. On October 16, 2018, the jury returned guilty on all counts. Both Amanda Beaty and Roger Dale Prince II were convicted of felony murder in the perpetration of aggravated child abuse and felony murder in the perpetration of aggravated child neglect. Amanda was additionally convicted of aggravated child endangerment. Criminal court judge Jeff Wicks imposed mandatory life sentences on both of them. Immediately, the moment the verdict was read, Wesley Beaty was in that courtroom. He locked eyes with Amanda before her sentencing. He said, afterward, that she looked regretful. He had been banned from his son's funeral. This courtroom, 4 years later, was the closest thing to justice, or to closure, that he would ever be given. Jean Quinn sat through every single day of that trial. She heard prosecutors describe what was done to her great-grandson as torturous. She watched Leah take that stand. Laura Worthington, Amanda's cousin, put it plainly. It's as much closure as we're going to get, because we'll never know who did it, why they did it. We'll never get that answer, and we knew that from the beginning. Roger Prince is serving a life sentence in Morgan County. He maintained his innocence through the entire trial. He maintains it still. Amanda Beaty is serving a life sentence, plus additional time for child endangerment. She took the stand in her own defense, and on that stand, she admitted something she had never said publicly before, that she believed Roger had killed her son, that she had made the wrong choice, as a parent, again and again. Wesley Beaty filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both of them. He also filed a separate lawsuit against the Tennessee Department of Children's Services. That lawsuit put into public record what the case file had already shown: an open, active case on Levi. A court order, signed and legally binding, prohibiting Roger Prince from being near him. An order that was violated, repeatedly, with no enforcement behind it. Unverified, whether this case prompted any specific legislative or procedural reform within Tennessee DCS Cindy Wicks, the babysitter who had held Levi weeks before he died, who told DCS something wasn't right, who later helped run the Justice for Baby Levi Facebook page, said it the simplest way anyone did. He was a little baby. He should have been protected, and he wasn't. The community of Wartburg didn't wait for a courtroom to grieve. They put up blue ribbons on their porches and storefronts. They held balloon releases at the Wartburg walking track. They gathered, repeatedly, for a child most of them had never met, because somebody needed to say his name out loud. And at his grave, on the anniversary of his death, Wesley Beaty stood with his own balloons. He had not been allowed at the funeral. This was the only goodbye he was given. Wesley says he's doing his best to close this chapter. He knows Levi is with God, but there's something he said that doesn't close. That can't. If you are watching this, and you know a child, a neighbor's child, a family member's child, any child, who has stopped crying out loud, whose injuries don't match the explanations they're given, who seems smaller than they should be, the number for the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline is 1-800-422-4453. It is available 24 hours a day. You do not need proof. You need a phone. The community of Wartburg, Tennessee, put up blue ribbons. They held vigils. They demanded, loudly, that a baby who could not speak for himself would not be forgotten. Wesley Beaty was banned from his son's funeral. The conviction was, as he said, the closest he would ever get to closure. He wished for one more moment, just one. Jean Quinn sat in that courtroom every single day, and Leah, a child herself, took the stand. They were Levi's voice. Levi Beaty, 17 months old, he cried without making a sound.